Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's District Administration Web Seminar, which is entitled The Technology You Need to Support New Learning Models and How to Fund It, which is brought to you by the generous support of our sponsor, Cisco Meraki. Now, before we get started, I would just like to share just a few housekeeping items with you all, and then we'll get started. For technical support, please use the chat panel, which you can find on the right side of your screen. Then select on my name, which is Stephen Blackburn, and then type your message if you're having any technical issues, and I should get to you shortly. If you don't have computer speakers, or maybe if you prefer to listen privately, please dial the phone number and access code that I'll be posting in the chat window in a few moments, so look out for that. We will also be welcoming any questions you have today with a Q&A session that will take place at the end of the presentation. To submit any of your questions, please use the Q&A panel, which is located at the bottom right side of your screen. Then send your questions to all panelists, which should be the default option. If you don't see the chat or the Q&A panels, then please look to the right side of your screen once again in the bottom, and then click on the expand triangle, which is located in front of the panel name to make sure you have access to it. Also, something important to note very quickly, and then we'll get started. If you would like to access the web seminar at a later time, you'll be pleased to know that everyone who registered, as well as who is attending today, all of you will receive an email with a link to the slide, as well as an archive recording. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the facilitator of today's event, Natalie Rockefeller, who is the virtual sales specialist over at Cisco Meraki. Natalie, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you everyone for joining us today. It is both an honor and a pleasure to be your host today. And as Stephen had suggested earlier, the topic of conversation today will be technology that supports new learning models and how to fund it. And why this conversation now is that in reflecting back on a year and a half of being in a pandemic together, we've learned so much from our customers, and we've really seen so much innovation of how they've been able to use Cisco Meraki technology. And so we really wanted to be able to provide some of those experiences and to hear from our customers directly today, as well as share some of the amazing public funding resources that we have, so you are able to make your technology projects and initiatives a reality this year. And so before we get into the content and we introduce you all to our amazing speakers today, we were hoping to get a bit of an idea and a sense of any significant pain points that you all are experiencing right now. So is that a lack of budget across your school district? Is that perhaps a lack of resources across your IT staff? Is that ensuring connectivity across your school, or is that network security? And so as you guys can see, there is the polling question here on the right side of the screen. And so I will give everyone a minute to submit their answers, and we'll quickly review that before we get into our content today. Wow, and look at that. It looks like across the board, we have a lack of budget, a lack of skilled IT staff, and ensuring connectivity across the school, all at 33% across the board. And looks like nothing in terms of network security, but of course we will be discussing that today as well. So thank you all for sharing your answers. And so with that, I wanted to introduce our amazing presenters today, and we'll have each of them come off mute and share a little bit about themselves. But I would love to first introduce you to Esteban Nunez. He is a wonderful Meraki customer, and he is the IT director at St. Bonaventure Catholic Church and School out of Florida. So over to you, Esteban.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If you're in a school environment, you're probably either in the middle of bringing teachers and students back, or you're getting ready for that. So we appreciate everybody's time here today, taking a little bit of your busy schedule for this. I'm on it myself. We have teachers back this week, and then we have students back next week. I'm the IT director at St. Bonaventure Catholic Church and School. We're outside Fort Lauderdale. About 650 students, about 75 staff in our parish. So we're a combination church and school. And we are a Meraki customer for the past 3 years. So, and I'll be talking to you a little bit later as well. So thank you and welcome everyone.
Thank you, Esteban. And next, I would like to introduce you to Mark O'Connor, and he is the IT director at Russell Byers Charter School out of Pennsylvania. And I'll kick it over to you, Mark.
Thank you. How was everyone today? I appreciate the time, like Esteban said. I've been a longtime Meraki customer. Every school I've ever worked at, I've brought Meraki to. This will be my 7th school that I've introduced Meraki. And every time I've done it using E-Rate. So, that's kind of the focus of what we're going to discuss today, Meraki and how we can use E-Rate to get everything going.
Thank you, Mark. And next we have our amazing public funding advisor here on the Cisco team, Mike Turson.
Hey, it's nice to be on this call. I've been with Cisco going on 3 years now. I've been working in the E-Rate space for going on 15 years. So I've had plenty of interactions with the E-Rate and what it takes to be successful at it, and look forward to kind of sharing some of the different funding programs that school districts can leverage to bring different solutions to students.
Thank you, Mike. And last, I of course am your host. My name is Natalie Rockefeller, and I am a virtual sales specialist here at Meraki. So I have been supporting public sector accounts within the state of Indiana for about 3.5 years now. So predominantly K through 12, but I also help support some higher education institutions and some local government entities. So thank you so much, especially to our wonderful customer presenters today. I'm very excited to dig a little bit deeper into their experiences with Meraki. And with that, a little bit more about what we're going to cover today with you all. So we're going to start off with new learning models. So of course, we're going to talk through the different types of situations we're seeing our customers experience within their school districts and their campuses today, and then really align Cisco Meraki technologies and what we're seeing our customers use our product for across the board. And then we'll kick it over to Mike, where he's going to share a little bit more about the available public funding that's out there, and again, resources that his team has there to help support all of our customers. And then we're going to go ahead and close it out with a funding fireside chat, where we'll hear more from Esteban and Mark about their experiences deploying Meraki through public funding. Towards the tail end of that, we'll have an open Q&A session, so we're going to leave some time at the end for questions. But as Stephen mentioned, please feel free to pop any questions into the chat, and we will try to address those as we get through our presentation. And so ultimately, why we are here today is that there is a shared goal for us all here. And that is, of course, our sales team that supports you, our public funding team, and our customers, is that we want to be able to help provide a secure and connected school in really whatever way that looks like for you for this school year. And so we wanted to bring in, of course, public funding resources so that as we move into the new E-Rate cycle, as there's still CARES Act dollars out there for you to leverage, that you all have an idea of how we're seeing our customers use our technology today and how we can help solve any problems that you may be currently experiencing. Jumped a little ahead there. So new learning models. As we saw in spring 2020, when we first started experiencing this pandemic, was that all of our campuses and all of our school districts moved to a fully remote model. And I recall in speaking with my customers, there was a huge shift and a huge priority to be sure that students had devices in their hands as they were going home to be able to learn and to be able to reach their teachers and the staff there. And that also we saw a lot of our districts use Meraki equipment to be able to set up remote sites where students had internet connectivity if maybe they didn't have that at home. And so as restrictions began to ease a bit, we saw a lot of our districts move to a hybrid or a high flex model, where it was really up to the parents and the students in terms of comfortability. There was some districts who were having A students and B students kind of shifting on the days that they were actually on campus. So there was still a big need there to be able to connect virtually, as well as ensuring that we had all the technology on campus to support the numerous devices that we saw coming onto the network. And then of course we have our traditional in-person type of learning, where we had all students, faculty, staff on campus learning in the traditional sense. And so The important thing to note here is that this is going to look so different for every single school district across so many different states. And we here at Meraki, we really wanted to be able to provide you guys with long-term viable solutions. So essentially that we're not doing any sort of band-aid fixes to kind of get through this time, but we are proposing and helping recommend equipment that will be a long-term investment for you and ultimately will help you in the near future as well as the long-term future to help support your students and your staff. And so a little bit into the technology to support K through 12 and these different learning models. The first piece here, of course, would be the network backbone, right? Your wireless access points and your wired or your switching infrastructure. And I would say in working with my customers long before the pandemic, as well as through this past E-rate cycle, that there was a big shift and a big priority to bring in Wi-Fi 6 access points, to bring in mGig switching, to be able to accommodate for all of those devices that we see continuously coming onto the network, as well as the traffic that we're now passing over it, right? So video conferencing like we're doing here today, video streaming, there's a lot of new ways that we're leveraging the internet and connectivity. And so it is, of course, crucial to be able to have that network backbone on campus to be able to support all those initiatives. And then in terms of security, so both on the physical and the network security side, I would say in speaking with my customers, the biggest conversation that we're having right now, and a lot of this is through CARES Act funding, was around physical security. I heard a lot of my customers who said, we have NVRs on site, we have cameras that are well over 10 years old, and oftentimes we don't know if a camera is down, and we've dropped, essentially being able to see what's happening in a certain area of the campus. And with our cameras as well, because again, it's cloud-based and because they act as a sensor, we're able to determine where students and faculty are spending more time. So we can layer on top of Meraki technology to understand if people are properly social distancing, if there are masks in place. So there's a lot of really great ways that we can kind of build on that conversation of physical security. And then network security and our MX devices. So this is, of course, the backbone of your infrastructure to ensure that whether a student or a faculty member is on campus, off campus, that you guys have no threats coming onto your network and that our MX device is proactively doing that work for you. In addition, it has built-in SD-WAN capabilities, so we're able to prioritize things like video conference traffic so that your students are able to access their teachers and the resources they need at all times. And then the last piece that we wanted to focus on here was some of the insights that you get in addition to our networking. And so that would, of course, be our systems manager, mobile device management, which we saw a huge uptick for during the pandemic, where we had so many students off campus with their devices and all of the great problems and things that come along with that. So being able to remotely manage these devices, again, ensuring that they're not accessing any harmful content. And then, of course, how we're speaking to you today and how we're reaching so many people across so many different states would be WebEx technology and being able to collaborate virtually and making that very, very easy for you and for your teachers to be able to hold instruction virtually. And so how we all really tie that together with Meraki is, of course, the power of the platform. So we're bringing our IT, IoT, physical security all together under one dashboard. And so not only does that allow you to really seamlessly and quickly deploy any technology with Meraki, but it allows you to have that visibility and that insight from whether you're physically on campus or you're remote. And I know that was a very brief overview of our technology, and we could spend all day on that, but really here, I just wanted to say that this is what my job here for is, and you guys, of course, all have your own dedicated Meraki account managers. So we would love to talk to you about what your priorities are this year and really help align our technology to get the ball rolling on some of these initiatives. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mike to cover public funding.
Thank you, Natalie. Really appreciate the opportunity to kind of touch base on federal funding and how it can really impact school districts both now and moving forward in the future. with that said, so the public funding, a little bit about the Public Funding Office. We're here to help organizations better understand funding opportunities for technologies that are available through the different avenues of funding, whether that's federal funding from the stimulus, from COVID stimulus, from grants, bonds, and E-rate. And so the way I like to look at this is how to think about funding and what is the end goal. So as we have the different silos of funding, we have the stimulus funding. What can this funding be used for? Whether it's collaboration, security, how can you leverage E-rate with your network, and then coming out at the end of that, being able to provide a secure and inclusive learning environment for your schools. So that we'll just touch base on really the multiple sources of funding for education, and kind of go over a little bit about what it covers and how we can leverage this moving forward. So we have the COVID stimulus funding. The COVID related expenses that we can use this for is, the WebEx, network security cameras, and also increased bandwidth. But we also can utilize E-rate to help make the network a lot more robust, being able to bring in a lot more robust bandwidth so that you can now take care of all of the applications and solutions that are running across there. And then later on, I think we'll have like another webinar that will cover like federal, state, and local grants to kind of round out this circle of funding. But today we want to focus on the stimulus funding and the E-rate funding and creating a strategy around that. So back in March, if we all remember, some of us don't want to, but we have to embrace it. We had the CARES Act 1 pass, which was the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. So within that act, there was associated or siloed out about just under $31 billion for elementary and secondary institutions. Moving forward, fast forward to December, there was a just a little over $54 billion passed in the CARES Act 2. And then when we come to the final act, which is the ARPA or CARES 3.0, we have around $122 billion that were funded. Now, with each of these packages that were passed, there's spending deadlines that we need to kind of make sure that we stay aware of. And the first one is coming up this year, is the September 30th of 2021. So they need to make sure that those ESSER funds are encumbered or going to be spent before this, or those funds will be moved back to the Department of Education. Moving forward, there's a little bit longer runway for 2 and 3. So 2, we're looking at September 30th, 2022, and then a spending deadline of September 30th, 2023 for the CARES 3.0. Now, with the ESSER funding, this funding is intended to help states, school districts safely reopen schools, address significant learning loss, and take other actions to mitigate COVID-19 and the spread of it. So within the 3 different bills, the Department of Education released guidelines for the use of these funds. So there are 15 points of authorized uses of funds, and what we're going to focus on are 4 of the 15 points. So the first point that you can use this for anything dealing with education technology to facilitate continued learning. So that's anything that deals with the delivery of content to the student. The other one is addressing learning loss among students with kind of an emphasis put on at-risk students. And then there is money for training, professional development for faculty and administration. And then the last but not least is other activities necessary to maintain operations and continuity of services. So as we look at these 4 points of authorized use for funding, they're fairly broad. And when it comes down to it, we need to make sure that we're tying funding back to what it's intended to, preventing, preparing for, and responding to COVID-19. So looking at how these funds can be used, we've been working with school districts all over the U.S. And we've had kind of siloed off into two different sections. So one, making sure that we have the students secure, both on campus and off campus, and then making sure that we have a trusted workplace. So that's for faculty and administration. So within the student section, we want to make sure that we have there's secure distance learning. So creating safe and secure learning environments, so students can have access to the unlimited information they need, no matter where they are, and also developing solutions that help engage students. So being able to help students connect in different ways and provide those ways to them so they can connect, through the different modes of leveraging the network. And then the last one is remote research and collaboration. This one is expanding, teaching and learning virtually across, not only from a physical location, but a virtual location. So whether that's the classroom, whether that's at home, whether that's, partnering with other institutions such as community colleges or universities, being able to have the solutions to work with those, all of those institutions, and whether they're at home or on site. Now moving over to kind of like the trusted workplaces, we want to be able to create hybrid learning facilities. So to support faculty initiatives, to help with teacher career development across the different physical campuses, classrooms, and help them to meet and to learn and to kind of help with the collaboration of ideas, and not only with their school but also with different other institutions. And then being able to bring back the administrative, so providing a safe and secure environment. So whether that's providing administration with identity or access control to help them work either remotely or either on site at the institution, and also providing the digital collaboration tools for that. Now that we've kind of explored some of the solutions that are eligible under the ESSER guidelines, we need to make sure that there's a robust network that sits below this, and that there's also sufficient bandwidth to deliver the solutions and applications to the students and faculty. So this is where E-Rate comes in. And a little bit about E-Rate. E-Rate was established as Telecommunications Act 1996. It is one of the largest source of EdTech funding out there for public, private, and charter schools, and also public libraries. So within this program, they have an annual cap of around $4.2 billion to be utilized. The nice thing is that's not a static number. They do adjust that for inflation. And then within that $4.2 billion, they kind of like to have a goal of hitting $1 billion for LAN, WAN equipment, and also on-campus Wi-Fi. Now, the way this program works is it's based off of the school district's national school lunch program. So for instance, if you had a school that had 80% of the school was on the national school lunch program, that would be the discount percentage that would be set for that school. So if it's at 80%, E-Rate will pay 80% of that project. The school district will pay the remainder 20%. And the really nice thing about this this program and what I love about it is the E-Rate program has been able to help out nearly 120 schools and libraries to connect to the internet, which probably would not have happened in the past if it wasn't for this act. Now, as we move forward, looking at E-rate, so E-rate, we're sitting in year 25 for new applicants. This is the second year of a 5-year budget cycle. So back in E-rate year 24, USAC reset everybody's budget. So everybody has a set budget for 5 years that they can utilize. So that is everything for internal connections. So as we look at this, at the way they have it categorized. So the categories of services for E-rate funds are allotted in 2 categories, and they are looking to align to the whole network approach. So not only bringing in the internet access, but being able to disseminate that out to the school district. So category 1 is a broadband to schools. Category 2 is the broadband or network services within schools. So the eligible category 1 services, that includes all the data transmission, internet access. The eligible category 2 services include all of the internal connections, which would include the access points, antennas, switching, routing, wireless control systems, basic firewall, along with the managed internal broadband services and basic maintenance for the internal connections. So as we look at the timeline on this, on where we're sitting at, right now we're in August. Like Esteban said, you're either in the mix of it or you're preparing to get into the mix of a new school year. So this is where all of the summer projects kind of pay off, right? So as the teachers come back, testing the network. So when I look at where we're sitting at from this month and how we're going to kind of execute on the E-rate strategy. So from August to September, this is a perfect time to start looking at your network and evaluating, right? Asking, taking a look at what is being ran across the network, what applications are running on there. Do we have sufficient bandwidth to deliver the necessary solutions and applications? How are the applications flowing across the network? Are we seeing any kind of security threats kind of popping up that we need to kind of address? And so we look at timelines, after that evaluation, so like August, September, October timeframe, you want to start putting together your RFP so you can release it around the November, December timeframe. So right in these windows right here. And then once you've completed those RFPs, you'll want to once the 471 window opens for E-rate, you want to be able to get that in quickly, because once you get that in, the quicker you get it in, the quicker it gets into the reviewers. And so the 471 window will close right around mid-March. And then once that window closes, then they'll start going in through the evaluation process. Those school districts that want to install their non-recurring or category 2 network equipment, they can do that. And then by probably 1st of May, you'll start to see funding start to roll out for the school districts. And so what I want to touch here is what we can use the category 1 and 2. So 1 is bringing in the additional bandwidth and also setting up the network so that the endpoints, i.e. whether that's phones, whether that's pads, whether that's notebooks, have the necessary bandwidth to engage with the applications. The second is making sure once students, faculty, and administration are on site, they have the necessary capabilities and connectivities to execute all of the solutions that have been put in place. So when we look at the kind of the end goal here, with leveraging the stimulus, the ESSER 1 through 3, and E-rate, we now have a complete picture of a secure and an inclusive learning environment, all set with federal funding. Now, from here, we like to say, there's additional resources that you need. And so here we're providing some additional resources for you. At the Public Funding Office, we like to say, don't do E-rate alone. I'm always like, don't do E-rate and stimulus alone. It can get pretty arduous and cumbersome. So utilize your the resources. We're here for you as a resource at the Public Funding Office. So look to engage us at any time. And again, thank you for the time to present. I'm grateful for this time and the funds that have been allocated to the school district so that we can further education. And I'll turn this back over to Natalie.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And that is a great point. It truly does take a village, and that is what we are here for. So we are more than happy to get more individualized calls with you all set up, and someone, of course, like Mike or whomever covers your region and really understand how we can best help support you. So thank you for that, Mike. And with that, we're going to go ahead and pivot over to our amazing customer speakers, and we are going to do a bit of a funding fireside chat, right? Because I think Mike, myself, we could sit here all day and talk through these, but it's best to hear from our customers directly and what their experiences have been with Meraki. And so we will kind of go ping pong back and forth here and ask both Esteban and Mark a few questions and hopefully dig a little bit deeper into how Meraki has made a difference for them. So just to go ahead and kick us off here, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Mark, and I would love to learn a little bit more about some of the challenges from a technology perspective that you were facing, whether that was prior to COVID, during the pandemic. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you about that.
So prior to COVID, one of the problems we had here, and it's been, if you're in education, it's prevalent. You have networks that were built poorly, you have poor coverage, you've got poor utilization, throughput, and quality. The pandemic really highlighted that, not so much when we went out, but when we came back in and we had teachers teaching virtually, we had students on Google Meets all day long, and it really highlighted the poor quality of the network as an overall infrastructure, not just, the Wi-Fi, but our throughput all the way through. So really, the pandemic did a great job of just magnifying all of our flaws internally and really brought it to the forefront. So the teachers felt the pain points where, 6 months prior, they might not have necessarily noticed them. The students definitely felt the pain points, 6 months prior, they might not have noticed them. I noticed them as looking at the network every day, but, the day-to-day people using it really saw the poor quality of the network prior to me being able to move over.
Thank you for sharing that, Mark. And that's similarly what I've heard from my customers directly too, is that it wasn't really just one issue or one priority. It was so many different factors that really played into those gaps and those issues being highlighted. And so I truly do commend all of the IT directors out there who got creative and made it work. So thank you for sharing that, Mark. And Esteban, I would love to hear from you directly as well as what you saw as any issues or any problems that you saw within your school.
Of course. So again, every day today we talk about prior to COVID or after COVID, prior to pandemic. So prior to pandemic, we had a network working. It was, firing on all cylinders, but it's like a 4-cylinder car. And the pandemic, what brought up to light is, well, we need a bigger engine to support this. And we figure, okay, the pandemic is hopefully temporary, right? Eventually we will overcome this, but it's still the right solution to upgrade to a V6, which is basically what we did in the past 12 months during pandemic with Meraki. So our network was working, and probably our biggest challenge was, one, we didn't have the correct Wi-Fi coverage throughout the campus. So we had either dead spots or weak spots, or some places where the antennas were not, in the right place or properly configured. So, it created some issues. So in most places it was working, but in some issues it wasn't. So that brings up the challenge, because it's like, okay, make it harder to troubleshoot, because where is it that it's not working, etc. That was number one. And then number two, the lack of, with the vendor we were using prior to Meraki, the lack of a central dashboard And if I talk to you offline, you'll hear me say this 20 times. I cannot say enough good things about the Meraki dashboard. So in one place, you see your entire network. You see all your access points, all your cameras, all of your Bluetooth devices for IoT. You see all of your switches. You see your secure devices, anything that is related to your network infrastructure. And because it's an online cloud-based network, doesn't matter where you are. So you can be on the phone, on the iPad, I'm on my laptop, I'm traveling, I'm at home, I'm in the church versus in the school. And if somebody calls me, I can get to troubleshoot any of these devices remotely, or either troubleshoot or find out what the status is or what the issue might be. So that's reason number two why we are now a Meraki customer, and that's probably the number one feature that that I cannot stop talking about with Meraki.
Thank you, Esteban. And I love to hear that, right? Because I thought when hearing your story and Mark's story, Mark had brought Meraki into so many different campuses. And for you being a newer adopter at this school, I'd love to know a little bit about what that onboarding or what that learning curve was like for you when you moved over to Meraki.
So when we went to Meraki 3 years ago, we started with the MV cameras. So we wanted to improve our physical security on our campus. We have 102 cameras on site. We are about 650 students, about 85 staff. And if you look up us on Google Maps, you can get an idea of our physical space and buildings. So 102, and we just bought 10 more. So we are right now pretty much at capacity. So 112 cameras cover, basically we have almost every single corner of the campus covered. There's some places where we on purpose don't have a camera. So for example, the principal's office, right now there is no camera there, and we don't intend to put a camera in that at a private office. But all the classrooms, many of our outdoor spaces, our church, our meeting rooms, our corridors, our multi-use rooms, all of those places have Meraki cameras. And we use them prior to the pandemic. And again, I hate referencing that. Prior to the pandemic, they were a physical security, intrusion detection, and also student behavior. So not necessarily, we're not spying on cameras, we're not spying on students, but if an issue does arise, you can go back and say, well, here's what happened because we have that data recorded. And again, with Meraki, 24/7 online, remote, anywhere. So you can view the footage no matter where you are, very easy access. During the pandemic, interesting enough, the cameras became our quarantine tool. So a student reports quarantine, reports a positive test, and now we have to determine, do we need to quarantine that entire classroom? Where was that student? Who did that student interact with? So not in every case, but in many cases, we were able to go to a Meraki MV camera and review footage and say, okay, you know what, in that classroom, the entire classroom needs to go on quarantine because of high exposure, or in that particular case, we only need to send the following 3 students on quarantine. So that was our main usage for Meraki cameras in the past 12 months. And I don't think I answered the question, but hopefully that was useful.
No, that was, Esteban. It's so unique to me because oftentimes with our customers, we see them first dive into Meraki on the networking side, right? So it's very unique that you started in cameras, and that's really what opened up your perspective and being open to the rest of our portfolio. So thank you for sharing that. And then I'm going to go ahead and pivot back over to Mark here. And Mark, from both what I'm hearing from you and Esteban, it sounds like you guys had very similar issues you were facing, was that the network just wasn't where it needed to be. And that was extremely apparent in the pandemic. And so I would love to know of how you went about solving this problem and where you really started and what that process looked like for you.
I'd already had internal audits on the network. I knew my dead spots. I knew my throughput. I knew my weak spots everywhere on the network. Just to piggyback a little bit on what Esteban said, is I wish I had at this particular organization, I wish I had the Meraki dashboard, because it would have taken me a lot less time to troubleshoot the problems that I had with a really comprehensive dashboard like that, but I didn't. So it was done very physically, walking around, site surveys, and then it was a call to Meraki. I've had a really great relationship with Meraki and different specialists and technical specialists, from being with them for so long. And it really was a conversation. This is what I know I'm up against. I know that for E-rate, I get about 85%, 90% of my funding through E-rate. So I'm going to be spending very little for every dollar that I spend with Meraki. And at that point in time, it was just a conversation. I know I needed X number of switching. I know I needed a new MX. I know I needed, X number of indoor access points, outdoor access points, and super high density access points. And that was, I mean, I want to make this sound like it was a lot harder, but, and this will sound absolutely terrible. I'm not a Meraki employee, but Meraki really makes it easy. There's a ton of people, there's a ton of people who can help you, from, E-rate specialists like Mike to anybody else. So I'd like to say it was really hard. The hardest part is like hanging access points. When I talk to Meraki, I say, look, this is what I'm thinking. I want an MX450 up front because, like Esteban, I want to have a lot of horsepower. E-rate makes it easy for me to buy a lot of equipment that I wouldn't necessarily be able to afford. It makes it easy for me to buy, long-term licenses, so I don't have to worry about renewing a license every year. And then just, hashing out some of the smaller details. Do I need a really super high density, MR65 in this area, or can I, maybe get away with something a little bit less? But there's somebody at Meraki to help you with just about anything, whether it's the actual purchase, it's the funding, or, the support, getting on a support call and saying, hey, this access point is acting up. And it might be something simple like, well, let's flash a new image and start over, or, gee, you know what? It's in a really bad spot. So I want to make it to be a lot more troublesome. And I want to say, like, I was thrashing through the jungle with a machete, but Meraki's a really good partner.
Well, I'm so happy to hear you say that, Mark, and that you call out your relationship with Cisco and Meraki, because I know, speaking from my own perspective and the rest of my team that cover the Central East, is that we would love to work with every single customer like this and really have that relationship where you feel comfortable reaching out to us, looking for recommendations, or whatever the case may be. It's very comforting to hear that you've had that experience.
Yeah, it's been, and I'd like to say it's just my current team of representatives who I'm working with, but this has been over years, and people have changed and moved on to other positions, and don't even have to interact with the schools that I'm in, and I still discuss Meraki stuff with them. So it's a great organization to partner with. Yeah, I can't say enough.
Thanks for saying that, Mark. And Esteban, I would love to know similarly from you as well, as facing these issues through the pandemic and knowing that you needed to make upgrades to the network. Tell us about how you went about solving those problems and finding the resources that you needed.
Perfect. And I want to touch up on the point that Natalie mentioned earlier, and that is that it takes a village. So about this time a year ago, we were looking at the upcoming E-rate cycle and upcoming IT projects. So point of emphasis number one is pay attention to the timeline. So we're looking at things that you want to go live August of 2022. You need to be deciding on those projects now, right? So you're deciding, what projects am I going to work with next year for networking, for Wi-Fi, and whatever else on your campus. So new laptops, devices, phones, whatever it is that you need, which of those projects will qualify for the funding that you can get from the government, from assistance, whether it is E-rate, whether it's CARES, et cetera, and the others, grants and loans that are available. So the timing it's very timely now that we're looking at that, because then come the end of the year, you're going to be sending out, if not already, right, in the next, if we look at that timeline that Michael shared with us earlier, if we look at the timeline, soon you'll be sharing out RFPs, so you can then start getting your proposals and then follow the whole E-rate documentation cycle to get this going for August of 2022. So now that's challenge number one, and that's that's what we were doing last year. So last year we decided, you know what, we're going to use E-rate, and we are going to put a V6 and replace our 4-cylinder car that we have going on here at St. Bonaventure. So we decided to implement Wi-Fi 6. We decided to do new cabling for all of the access points and interconnectivity between the uplinks between the switches, and we decided to upgrade all of our switches. We were with a different vendor with 16 switches. We went to 21 switches, and we were with a different vendor with 35 access points. We went to 42 access points. And when you hear the word E-rate and you're in IT, and let's say you're not high up in the school admin circle of people, right? And you hear E-rate and you're like, oh, it's just going to make it more complicated for me. And that's one way of looking at it. And it's very bureaucratic, a lot of paperwork, a lot of forms, a lot of going back and forth, things you have to edit, things you have to resubmit, etc. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is look at it as an opportunity to fund projects that you know you need, where administration may not give you that funding if it were not for E-rate, because E-rate is going to offset that cost to make it a lot more manageable. So I was hesitant, in my first E-rate cycle. I'm like, it's just so easy to issue a purchase order, and if we have the funding, we buy it. If not, we wait till next year. Then once you embrace E-rate, you're like, I have all these opportunities that I can do a lot faster and a lot easier. And again, it's money that the government makes available for this. So it's not like, there's no guilt about it. It's money that's available to be used for these projects to improve your campus, to improve your school, to improve your learning, to improve your teachers, your students, etc. So we applied. We did our RFPs. We got all of our forms. So you're gonna become very familiar with 470s, 471s, and all of a sudden it's like, did you receive the 470? Did you submit the 470? Where is it? What happened to it? All of that will become, native language to you as you navigate the E-rate cycle. So point number 2 on this, which Natalie mentioned earlier, is it takes a village. So there's 3 of us at St. Bonaventure that are on the E-rate circle of life. So myself, another IT person, and the school principal. So all 3 of us each handle a little bit different part of the E-rate cycle here internally. We also partner with an outside vendor that is like, they call them E-rate consultants. And you can look at it again. One perspective is to say, that's going to cost money. But the other way to look at it is, yes, I have to give them a little bit of piece of the pie, but they're going to make it so much easier on me. So do not be afraid to engage with an outside consultant. Another party, and again, it does take a village. It takes a lot of people, is your Meraki partner. It's going to be a partner that is E-rate, well-versed on E-rate. So they'll know when you talk about, I want to E-rate fund this, they'll immediately know, is it category 1, category 2, what project is it that we're doing, etc. And then Natalie and Michael's team at Cisco and Meraki, where through your Meraki partner, they'll engage the appropriate people at Cisco headquarters they'll get involved in the E-rate. Again, Cisco's in the business of selling equipment, software, hardware, etc., to solve people's solutions. So they dedicate these resources, so you buy, and then there's more in the future. So don't be afraid to engage with a consultant. Don't be afraid to engage your Meraki partner. And of course, take advantage of the resources that Cisco makes available for this, such as Michael and his team.
Thank you so much, Esteban, for sharing a little bit more on your processes and who you engage internally to really get these projects across the line. But I would love to know is, you had talked about previously using a different vendor, and there's so much out there. There's so many different options. I'd love to know from you, as you were evaluating these options, what was the deciding factors for you to go with Meraki and to make that investment?
Dashboard. So probably the number one feature, I don't want to discount the human relationship part of the relationship, the human aspect of it, right? You develop a good link with the Meraki people, the Meraki team, like Mark mentioned earlier. I mean, I know we're in a sales webinar, right? We're learning about this, and there's always a sales objective in somewhere embedded on this. But I don't say it lightly, and I don't say it's hopefully as a salesperson. The sales team at Meraki has been superb. Working with them, they know their stuff. They know where to send you to for the information that you need. They're very well versed in E-rate funding and how to help cover all of these expenses. So that's one factor. But I will put that number 2 or number 3. Number 1 is the dashboard. So as we're evaluating Meraki, and I got exposed to the dashboard in the early days with the cameras, as I mentioned 3 years ago with the MV line of products. But you look at the dashboard and you see cameras and you're like, what else could I see here? And you see a little link for switching, you see a little link for wireless and things like that. And other things all of a sudden magically appear because the dashboard is constantly updated. So that is probably that is again the number 1 feature. You can a specific feature on the dashboard is, for example, right now the teacher in classroom 210 calls me and says, Esteban, I'm having Wi-Fi issues on 210. So before Meraki, that meant probably going to the classroom, see if I can replicate what's happening on another device and see if I can see exactly what's going on. I can then log into that access point through my laptop. I'm here on the campus and I, nearby. I can then see what port that access point is connected to, and I walk to that switch and then, keep troubleshooting that way. With Meraki, I could be in the church doing the live stream for our daily mass, and I get a call from 210, and you log into the dashboard, you look up the client, and in that screen, and I'll be more than happy to do a demo of this. We're not set up for this on this webinar, but if you coordinate with Natalie, I'll be more than happy to show you my personal experience with the dashboard. You click on the client and it tells you you're connected to this access point, connected on this port to this switch uplinks to this other switch, connected on this port to this other switch, all the way to your gateway. So you see the entire path, and easily restart, easily shut down, easily recycle, easily remove a client, change something, do whatever you need to do to troubleshoot. So that is probably the number 1 feature why we are on Meraki today, and we're doing more Meraki stuff.
Thank you so much, Esteban. And I think that's such a valid point, is with the limited resources that the IT teams we generally see have, how can we maximize that for you, and how can we make your job easier so you're not spending all day troubleshooting and running around campus? So thank you for sharing that, Esteban. And then last question, and
if I may add one thing there, and that is, we talk a lot about troubleshooting, right? So the only thing I want to say is some people will say, oh, now that you implemented a new networking Wi-Fi solution, all primes go away. Never. All primes never go away. There's always an issue. Different manufacturers, different devices, right? What Meraki brings to the table that to me is a huge factor with the dashboard is the ease of troubleshooting. Problems will arise. There'll be a client that cannot connect. A Wi-Fi access point will go down. But Meraki, the ease of troubleshooting that is, to me, again, through the dashboard, what makes a difference with Meraki.
Absolutely. Thank you, Esteban. I love how passionate you are about it. It makes me very happy. So my last question today, and Mark, I'm going to pass it over to you first, is tell me a little bit about what this next school year looks like, what the next 12 months look like, maybe any technology priorities that you have, and how you hope to leverage public funding to make those projects a reality.
It's funny, we tend to meet about like what's the next school year going to look like, and we discuss it once, twice, 3 times a week. And if you would have asked me this a couple of years ago, I would say, oh, I know exactly what's going to happen. Answering this question now, I don't know what's going to happen. I do know that I definitely learned that we're going to try and always be prepared. As far as, our Meraki solution, it's pretty robust. It's pretty powerful. It's probably a lot more powerful than you're going to see in most schools. Just like Esteban said, we can prepare and we can buy a bit more horsepower with E-Rate. So what I'm looking for this school year is really I'm going to bring on some MV cameras if possible. Looking at the SVPP grant, which is, I actually didn't know anything about it until Cisco told me all about it. It'll help me purchase security cameras. I love the Meraki MTs because we do have some facility problems that would benefit from monitoring. Ultimately, what I'm looking forward to for this year is like getting really stable, getting really good at what we do, being prepared for school going out, classrooms going out, the whole building going out, and being much more nimble than we were a year ago, a year and a half ago. At this point, I can better handle teaching from within the school to children who might be home quarantining than I was a year ago. That's ultimately, this year is going to be about being prepared, because I don't know what's going to come up. All the discussions in the world that we've had, no one really has an idea. Are we going to have to close down again? What's November going to bring? What happens when we close down a classroom? But I feel like we're a little bit better positioned to handle that this year. That's kind of where we're at. I'd love to say, we're going to be adding this and adding that, but really, I aside from cameras, we're looking to leverage what we're installing, what we've put in, and really just make it a great year. A lot of teachers are going to complain when they can't reach their kids, or as a school, we've went from a non-technical teaching-based school to we rely heavily on technology now, and the teachers like it. And if the technology can't work because the network infrastructure is poor, they're going to knock on my door. And right now, we've made many shifts and many changes as far as how the teachers teach the students. And now I feel a little bit more comfortable with being able to provide that good infrastructure for them to support the kids.
Yes, I think that's remains true for all of us. It's a big question mark what the future holds, and it's great to know that you can be flexible and you guys can pivot in any last minute to be able to support your students and your faculty. So thank you for sharing, Mark. And I know we're coming up on time here, Esteban, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to answer that same exact question, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up today.
Perfect. So for us, as I mentioned, I gave you our numbers in terms of the equipment we have. And again, look us up on Google Maps and you'll see our campus sites, etc. So we're maxed out pretty much on cameras, on Wi-Fi access points, we're okay. And of course on switches. Those are things that, once you're established, there's only, unless you add more physical space, there's not much to add. What we're lacking and where we're using a different vendor is in our network security. So we currently work through a different gateway and firewall. So MX, and again, when you become a Meraki customer, you start learning about these codes, right? MR, MS, MT, and it's like, what do you mean? Well, you'll know what it means when you become Meraki. They become like part of your language. So the MX line of products on Meraki is probably what's on the horizon for us. I don't know if this year, most likely next year. So a year from now, we will be looking at the MX product line.
You're going to love that, Esteban.
I know I will. It's a matter of I have to end a contract that I am currently under.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Esteban and Mark. It's just been a pleasure to get to know you and your stories. And we just appreciate your time so much today. And we hope to just continue to build this relationship together. So thank you both. We greatly, greatly appreciate you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Same here, and I'll repeat what I said earlier, and that is, Natalie, as you know, if any customer wants to see more, wants to see the dashboard from a customer, not like the sales demo one, but one that's live, I'll be more than happy to make myself available in a future opportunity. The more I talk about Meraki, the more I learn about it. So it's a win-win situation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And so I will give us maybe 1 minute here for anyone to come off mute or raise their hand from our attendees list if you guys have any questions. And then also please feel free to drop those in the chat here.
Okay, perfect. We do have time for one question, and I'll bring that up now. But even though we only have time for one question, I do still welcome all of our attendees to still submit your question in the Q&A poll. So even if we won't get to it live, I'm sure that our friends over at Meraki will answer any of the questions that you provide in the Q&A after today's event. So please do that. So let's see, the one question that I'll be asking for all of you today, it looks like it's for Mark as well as Esteban. This person was wondering if your school has applied for or if you've received any additional federal funding from the CARES Act or ARPA. And if so, how are you involved in that process?
We have received a lot of CARES money. We, as a leadership team, we discuss ways and how we're going to actually wind up spending that money. I had decided on bringing this organization over to Meraki before CARES money had ever come about, before we knew about it, so I already had it funded. And now we're just looking at supplementary type purchases and possibly, like I said, the MV cameras. We're gonna utilize it as best as possible, but we've been focusing on a lot, not necessarily on a technical aspect and with technology, but on bridging that learning gap for the kids with additional specialists and reading specialists and math specialists. So, we haven't really gotten really far into the technology that we could be purchasing, only because I was really proactive with E-Rate and knew that this project was on the horizon. So by the time the CARES Act came out, we were already well into this process.
So similar with us, we had some things that were already underway when CARES came out, but we did apply. The main thing to note, something like a difference between CARES and E-Rate is 25 years established. Everybody knows, what you can do, what you cannot do, what you need to do, by what date, and in what form, and where is it that you sign the paper. With CARES, it's a little bit more bureaucracy, and you have to be more careful to pay attention that you're applying to the right things and that you're signing in the right place. What I mean to say by that is, in code language, is we've gotten some things approved and some things have not been approved. So it's a little bit of more of a challenge. Part of it is because it's a newer program under 1 year, and it has hopefully a shorter duration span in terms of related to Corona, etc. But the main takeaway, and again, this is sometimes it takes a little bit to overcome it, is don't be afraid to apply. You can either look at it as too much work, or you can look at it as it's going to give me money that I didn't have before. So hopefully, we all easily switch over to there's money that wasn't there before.
Okay, perfect. So as you can see, we're at the top of the hour here. So I will hand things over to Natalie for your closing slide, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you again, Esteban and Mark. And so just quick thing to follow up on here, but next steps, would love to have you guys visit our website, Meraki.com. We have E-Rate landing pages. We have webinars dedicated to K-12, as well as as well as customer stories. So please feel free to visit there and see all the great resources. And also please feel free to reach out to myself. I'm happy to align you with whomever your Meraki virtual sales specialist is, or any other resources internally that we can help out with. And thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to working with you all through this next school year.
Perfect. And I'll just like to close by saying, I'd like to thank you all, our attendees, for joining us today. For those of you who enjoyed our presentation, you'll be pleased to know there are many more upcoming web seminars like this one that are provided by us at District Administration, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news, trends, in addition to current issues in K-12. Our wide range of readers here at DA, they subscribe for free to District Administration, and they stay up to date with us through our print magazine, in addition to the digital edition of the magazine, our newsletters, and web seminars like this one. And for those of you who would like to watch this web seminar again, or for those of you who believe that the solutions that were provided today would be helpful to your colleagues, you'll be pleased to know that there will be an archive recording of this web seminar that will be available at the URL that you can see on your browser here. And you can also expect to receive an email from our team at DA later tomorrow, which will include a link to all the slides as well as the on-demand video. So with that, on behalf of DA, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks everyone, and have a great fall semester. Take care, be well, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Take care.